The red warning lights flashed across the bridge of the USS Defiant as Commander Jake Martinez stared at the distress signal on his screen. The message was short but terrifying. Colony 7 on Kepler 442b was under attack. The Vorthik Empire had found them. How long ago did this come in? Martinez asked his communications officer, Lieutenant Korenbel. 18 hours, sir. The signal cut off after 3 minutes, Bell replied, her voice tight with worry. Martinez felt his stomach drop. 18 hours was a lifetime in a battle. The mining colony on Kepler 442b housed nearly 2,000 people, mostly families who had volunteered to work the dangerous Outer Rim territories. They had basic defenses, but nothing that could stop a full Vorthik assault. Set course for Kepler 442b. Maximum speed, Martinez ordered. And send word to Captain Hayes, tell her we're going in. The Defiant was a mid-sized warship, not the biggest in the human fleet, but fast and well-armed. Martinez had commanded her for 3 years, and his crew trusted him completely. They would need that trust for what was coming. The journey to Kepler 442b took 6 hours at full speed. During the trip, Martinez gathered his senior staff in the briefing room. Chief Engineer Pete Collins, a gruff man in his 50s, sat across from Lieutenant Amy Foster, the ship's tactical officer, Dr. Helen Ross. The chief medical officer looked pale as she reviewed the colony's population records. The Vorthik don't usually leave survivors, Collins said grimly. They take what they want and destroy everything else. We have to try, Martinez replied. Even if we're too late to save the colony, we might find someone alive. When the Defiant dropped out of hyperspace near Kepler 442b, the sight that greeted them was devastating. The colony's orbital station was a twisted wreck, floating in pieces among the debris of destroyed cargo ships. The planet's surface showed the dark scars of orbital bombardment. Life signs? Martinez asked, though he already feared the answer. Foster checked her sensors carefully. Very faint readings from the main settlement. Could be survivors, but the signals are weak. Take us down, Martinez ordered. Landing party of 12, full combat gear. The Defiant touched down near what had once been the colony's main hub. The buildings were mostly rubble now, with twisted metal and broken concrete scattered everywhere. The air was thick with smoke and the smell of destruction. Martinez led his team through the ruins, checking building after building. They found bodies, but no survivors. The Vorthak had been thorough in their work. Children's toys lay scattered among the debris, a reminder of the lives that had been lost. Commander, Foster called from ahead, I've got something. She was standing near what looked like a collapsed school building. But as Martinez approached, he saw that part of the structure had been built into the rocky hillside. There was a heavy metal door, partially hidden by fallen beams. Emergency shelter, Martinez realized. The colonists must have built it in case of attack. It took 4 men to move the debris blocking the door. When they finally got it open, they found a long tunnel leading deep underground. Emergency lighting flickered along the walls, powered by backup generators. Hello? Martinez called into the darkness. This is Commander Martinez of the human fleet. Is anyone there? For a moment, there was only silence. Then, from somewhere deep in the tunnel, came a small voice. Are you really human? Martinez felt his heart jump. Yes, we're human. We're here to help. Are you hurt? We're okay, the voice replied, but we're scared to come out. I understand, Martinez said gently. Take your time. We're not going anywhere. Slowly, figures began to emerge from the darkness. Children, Martinez realized with shock. Dozens of them, ranging from tiny toddlers to teenagers. They were dirty, scared, and clearly hungry, but they were alive. Foster knelt down to talk to a girl who couldn't have been more than 8 years old. What's your name, sweetheart? Lisa, the girl whispered. Lisa Brooks. This is my brother. Danny? She pointed to a boy who looked even younger, maybe 6 years old. Where are your parents? Foster asked softly, Lisa's eyes filled with tears. They told us to hide down here when the bad aliens came. They said they'd come get us when... It was safe, but that was 3 days ago. Martinez counted quickly. 43 children, ages 5 to 15. Some were siblings, others were friends who had been playing together when the attack began. All of them were orphans now. Dr. Ross moved among the children, checking for injuries and malnutrition. Most were in surprisingly good condition, considering what they had been through. The older children had done a remarkable job of taking care of the younger ones. "Commander," Collins called from deeper in the shelter, "you need to see this." Martinez followed the engineer to a storage room filled with emergency supplies. There were enough food, water, and medical supplies to last for weeks. But what caught his attention was a handwritten note taped to the wall. "To whoever finds our children," it read. "We are probably dead by now, but our kids are everything to us. Please don't let them become slaves. Please give them a chance to live free. Take care of them like they were your own." Martinez stared at the note for a long moment. Around him, his crew was helping the children gather their few belongings. The kids stayed close together, clearly frightened but trying to be brave. "Sir," Foster said quietly, "what do we do with them?" "The nearest human settlement is 3 weeks away, and we don't know if the Vorthak are still in the area." Martinez looked at the children. The oldest, a boy named Marcus Wright, was maybe 14. He had been helping the younger kids, acting like a big brother to children who weren't even related to him. The youngest, a little girl named Emma, couldn't have been more than 4. She was holding on to Danny Brooks like he was her lifeline. "We take them with us," Martinez said finally. "Sir?" Foster looked surprised. "We can't leave them here, and we can't spare the time to take them to a safe colony. The Vorthak might come back. These kids stay with us until we can figure out something." Better. Within an hour, the Defiant was lifting off from Kepler 442b with its unusual passengers. The children had been given quarters in the civilian section of the ship, and the crew was doing their best to make them comfortable. Dr. Ross had examined each child and declared them healthy, if somewhat underweight. As the ship entered hyperspace, Martinez stood in the doorway of the improvised nursery, watching his crew interact with the children. Collins was showing Danny how a simple computer worked, while Belle was teaching Lisa some basic words in the alien languages she knew. The children were curious about everything, asking endless questions about the ship and how it worked. "Are you sure about this, Commander?" Captain Hayes asked over the comm system. She was Martinez's superior officer, commanding the small battle group that included the Defiant. "These kids have nowhere else to go," Martinez replied. "The Vorthak killed their families, destroyed their home. The least we can do is give them safety until we can find them a new home." "And if we run into trouble?" "This is a warship, not a daycare center." Martinez watched as young Marcus helped Emma eat her dinner, cutting her food into small pieces with the patience of someone much older. "I think these kids are tougher than we realize. They survived 3 days in that shelter, taking care of each other. They're not going to break easily." As if to prove his point, Lisa Brooks walked up to him with a serious expression on her small face. "Commander Martinez, thank you for saving us. We promise we won't cause any trouble. We'll be good and we'll help however we can." Martinez knelt down to her level. "You don't need to thank me, Lisa, and you don't need to be anything other than kids. This is your home now, at least for a while." Lisa smiled for the first time since they had found her. "Can we really stay here? On the ship with all of you?" "As long as you want," Martinez promised. "We're family now." He had no idea how prophetic those words would prove to be. 3 months had passed since the Defiant rescued the children from Kepler 442b, and Commander Jake Martinez could barely recognize his ship anymore. What had once been a quiet military vessel now echoed with the sounds of laughter, running, feet, and endless questions from curious young minds. The crew had adapted to their new passengers in ways Martinez never expected. Chief Engineer Pete Collins, who had always been gruff and serious, now spent his off-duty hours in the engine room with Danny Brooks. The 8-year-old boy had shown an incredible interest in how the ship worked, and Collins found himself enjoying the role of teacher. "See this gauge here, Danny?" Collins pointed to a display showing the reactor's power output. "This tells us how much energy the ship's heart is making. Danny studied the numbers carefully. Why does it go up and down like that? Well, when we need more power for the weapons or to go faster, the reactor works harder. When we're just floating in space, it can rest a little. The boy nodded seriously, then asked, "What happens if it gets too hot?" Colin smiled. 3 months ago, he would have told any civilian to stay away from his engines. Now he was teaching an 8-year-old about reactor safety. That's why we have cooling systems? Want to see how they work? In the communication center, Lieutenant Karen Bell was having her own teaching moment with Lisa Brooks. The 10-year-old girl had an amazing ability to pick up languages, and Bell had started teaching her some basic alien words and phrases. The Vorthek word for stop is ket, Bell explained. But you have to say it with a growling sound in your throat. Lisa tried it several times, getting closer each time. Like this, ket? Perfect. You're getting really good at this. Try the word for a friend now. Meanwhile, in the ship's small library, 14-year-old Marcus Wright was reading everything he could find about space combat tactics. Lieutenant. Amy Foster had noticed his interest and started lending him basic military manuals. This book says that shields work best when they're rotating, Marcus said, looking up from a technical manual. But why don't we do that all the time? Foster sat down beside him. Because rotating shields use a lot of power. We save that for when we're actually fighting. Most of the time, static shields are good enough. Marcus made a note in the margin of his book. He had started keeping a journal of everything he learned, filling page after page with drawings and observations about the ship's systems. The younger children had found their own ways to fit into ship life. Little Emma, who was only 4, had become the unofficial mascot of the medical bay. Dr. Helen Ross found that the child's presence helped injured crew members heal faster. There was something about Emma's innocent smile that made even the toughest soldiers feel better. "Dr. Ross, is this the magic machine that fixes people?" Emma asked, pointing to a medical scanner. "It's not magic, sweetheart. It's science." "But sometimes science can seem like magic," Ross explained. Lifting Emma up so she could see the display better, the ship's routine had changed completely. Breakfast was now a noisy affair with 43 children chattering about their plans for the day. The crew had to organize their work shifts around school time, which had become a ship-wide effort. Everyone contributed to teaching the children something, whether it was basic math, history, or practical skills. Captain Susan Hayes had initially been worried about having children on a warship. But when she visited the Defiant to inspect the situation, she found something unexpected. The crew was happier, more motivated, and working together better than ever before. "They call you Dad Jake," she observed, watching Martinez help some of the younger children with their dinner. "And they call you Mom Susan when they talk about you," Martinez replied with a grin. "Hope you don't mind." Hayes watched Lisa Brooks carefully pronounce a difficult alien word while Bell clapped encouragingly. "How are they adapting to ship life? Better than we expected. They're smart, curious, and they want to help." Yesterday, Marcus figured out a more efficient way to route power to the shield generators. Collins is implementing it next week. A 14-year-old improved our shield systems. He's been studying our technical manuals like they're adventure stories. And Danny has memorized half the ship's engineering procedures. Lisa can already speak basic phrases in 6 alien languages. Hayes was impressed, but she was also concerned. "Jake, these kids have been through terrible trauma. Are you sure they're really okay?" Martinez looked around the dining hall. The children were laughing and playing, but he could see the signs Hayes was talking about. They stayed close together, especially the younger ones. They got nervous when adults raised their voices, even in normal conversation, and they all slept with the lights on. "They're healing," Martinez said finally. "It's slow, but they're getting better every day. And I think being useful, being part of something important, is helping them more than just sitting around feeling sorry for themselves." 2 weeks later, Martinez's theory was put to the test. The Defiant received a distress call from a cargo ship under attack by Vorthek raiders. As the ship prepared for battle, the children were moved to the most protected part of the ship, the emergency shelter near the reactor core. Stay here until we come get you, Martinez told them. No matter what happens, do not leave this room. The children nodded seriously. They had practiced this drill many times, but now it was real. As the adults hurried to their battle stations, the children huddled together in the shelter. The battle was fierce. 3 Vorthik raiders had surrounded the cargo ship and were demanding its surrender. The Defiant arrived just as the first raider was preparing to board the helpless vessel. All stations, battle ready, Martinez commanded. Target the lead raider and fire when ready. The Defiant's weapons struck the enemy ship's shields, causing them to flicker and spark. But the Vorthak returned fire immediately, and the Defiant shook under the impact. In the emergency shelter, the children could hear the sounds of combat. Explosions, alarms, and the hum of weapons charging. 12-year-old Marcus Wright was trying to keep the younger children calm when he noticed something odd. There was a scanner in the shelter, meant to monitor the ship's status during emergencies. Marcus had seen similar devices in the books he had been reading, and he knew how to read the basic displays. What he saw made his eyes widen. The enemy shields are cycling at 2.7 terahertz, he whispered to himself, remembering a chapter about shield frequencies. But our weapons are set to 2.9. That's why we're not doing much damage. Marcus stared at the scanner, his mind racing. He had learned that shield frequencies had to be matched exactly to cause maximum damage. The Vorthak shields were running at a slightly different frequency than the ship's weapons were calibrated for. Lisa, he called to his friend. You know how to use the ship's internal communication system, right? Yes, Karen taught me. But we're not supposed to use it during battle. This is important. I need to talk to Lieutenant Foster right away. Lisa hesitated for a moment, then activated the communication panel. Lieutenant Foster? This is Lisa. Marcus needs to tell you something important. On the bridge, Foster was surprised to hear from the children during battle. Lisa, you're supposed to stay quiet during combat. What's wrong? Marcus says the enemy shields are running at the wrong frequency. He wants to tell you the numbers. Foster was about to dismiss this as a child's imagination, but then she remembered how much Marcus had been studying. Put him on. Lieutenant Foster, this is Marcus. I'm looking at the scanner down here, and the enemy shields are cycling at 2.7 terahertz. I read in the tactical manual that if you adjust our weapons to match that frequency, we'll do more damage. Foster checked her own sensors quickly. The boy was right. The Vorthak shields were indeed running at 2.7 terahertz. While their weapons were set to standard 2.9, Martinez, I'm getting tactical advice from Marcus Wright. He's right about the shield frequencies, adjusting weapons to 2.7 terahertz. From Marcus? The kid? Martinez was surprised, but he trusted his officer's judgment. Do it. The next volley of weapons fire struck the lead Vorthik raider with devastating effect. The enemy shields collapsed completely, and the ship began to drift, powerless. Direct hit. Enemy shields are down. Foster reported. The remaining 2 raiders, seeing their leader destroyed so quickly, decided to retreat. Within minutes, the battle was over. Later, as the crew gathered in the dining hall to celebrate their victory, Martinez found Marcus reading another technical manual. That was good thinking during the battle, Martinez said. You might have saved lives today. Marcus looked up from his book. I just remembered something I read. Will you teach me more about shield frequencies? Martinez smiled. I think Lieutenant Foster would be happy to teach you. But remember, you're still a kid. You don't have to carry the weight of the ship on your shoulders. I know, Marcus replied. But this is my home now. I want to help protect it. Around the dining hall, the other children were chattering excitedly about the battle. They had all heard Marcus's communication with the bridge, and they were proud of their friend. But more than that, they were proud to be part of the ship's crew. Danny Brooks was already asking Collins about weapon systems. Lisa was practicing more alien languages with Bell. Even little Emma was asking Dr. Ross about the medical procedures she might need to know. The battle alarm screamed through the corridors of the USS Defiant as Commander Jake Martinez rushed to the bridge. Intelligence reports had indicated a major Vorthak fleet movement in the Centauri sector, and the human forces were moving to intercept them. What they found was worse than anyone had expected. "Report," Martinez ordered as he took his command chair. 37 Vorthak warships, sir," Lieutenant Amy Foster replied, her face pale. "They're arranged in a battle formation we've never seen before. Captain Hayes is requesting all ships move to attack position." Martinez felt his stomach tighten. The human fleet had only 22 ships, and they were outnumbered by experienced Vorthak warriors. But they couldn't let the alien fleet reach the inner colonies. "All hands, battle stations," Martinez announced over the ship's communication system. "Children to emergency shelter immediately." In their quarters, the children of the Defiant heard the familiar alarm. They had practiced this drill dozens of times over the past 8 months, but something felt different about this one. The alarm seemed more urgent, and the crew members they passed in the corridors looked more worried than usual. "Danny, help." Emma with her safety harness, Lisa Brooks called to her younger brother as they made their way to the emergency shelter. At 11 years old, she had become like a big sister to all the younger children. "Is this a big battle?" asked 9-year-old Danny, his arms full of the stuffed animals the younger children needed for comfort. "I think so," replied Marcus Wright, now 15 and clearly trying to act mature for the sake of the others. "But Dad, Jake, and the crew will keep us safe." "They always do." The emergency shelter was located deep in the ship's core, surrounded by the strongest armor and shields. The children filed in orderly fashion, helping each other with safety equipment and comfort items. They had learned to be calm during battles, but they could all feel the tension in the air. "Everyone stay close together," Marcus instructed, taking charge as the oldest. "Remember what we practiced? If something happens, we stay together no matter what." The battle began with a massive exchange of weapons fire. The Vorthak fleet moved with deadly precision, their ships working together like a pack of hunting animals. The human ships fought bravely, but they were clearly outmatched on the bridge of the Defiant. Martinez watched his tactical display with growing concern. 3 human ships had already been destroyed, and the Vorthak were pressing their advantage. The enemy seemed to know exactly where the human ships would be, as if they had studied human tactics for months. "Sir, the Vorthak are concentrating their fire on our ship," Foster reported. "I think they recognize us as the ship that rescued the children," Martinez nodded grimly. The Defiant had become famous throughout both human and Vorthak space as the ship that carried children into battle. Some human admirals thought it was inspiring. The Vorthak apparently saw it as a target. "Evasive maneuvers," Martinez ordered. "Keep us away from their main formation." But the Vorthak had planned for this. As the Defiant tried to withdraw, 3 enemy ships broke formation and moved to surround them. The human ship shook under heavy weapons fire, and damage reports began flooding in. "Hull breach on Deck 7, Chief Engineer Pete Collins reported from the engine room. "I'm sealing it now, but we've lost power to the forward shields." "Life support is failing on Decks 3 and 4, added Dr. Helen Ross from the medical bay. "We need to evacuate those sections." In the emergency shelter, the children felt every hit the ship took. The lights flickered, and they could hear the groaning of stressed metal. Little Emma started to cry, and Danny pulled her close. "It's okay, Emma," he whispered. "The ship is strong. We're safe down here." But even as he said it, Danny could see the worry in Marcus's eyes. This battle was different from the others. The ship was taking more damage than ever before. Suddenly, the shelter's lights went out completely. Emergency power kicked in a moment later, but the red emergency lighting made everything look scary and strange. Then they heard something that made their blood freeze, the sound of cutting tools working on the shelter's door. "That's not our crew," Marcus whispered. "They would have announced themselves." The children huddled together in the darkness, listening to the horrible sound of metal being cut. They had all heard stories about what happened to humans who were captured by the Vorthak. None of the stories had happy endings. The door finally gave way with a loud crash. Tall, armored figures pushed through the opening, their weapons glowing in the dim light. The Vorthak soldiers were huge, much bigger than humans, with tough skin and multiple arms. Their faces were hidden behind battle masks, but their eyes glowed with a cold alien intelligence. "Do not move," one of them growled in broken human speech. "You come with us now." The children pressed closer together, but they did not scream or panic. 8 months of living on a warship had taught them to be brave, even when they were terrified. Lisa stepped forward, putting herself between the aliens and the younger children. "We're not afraid of you," she said, her voice shaking but determined. The Vorthak soldier tilted his head, surprised by the child's courage. "You should be afraid, little human. Your ship is dying. Your protectors cannot save you. Our family will come for us," Danny said, joining his sister. "They always do." The alien soldiers began separating the children, roughly grabbing them and pushing them toward the broken door. Marcus tried to fight back, but a Vorthak soldier easily overpowered him. One by one, the children were dragged from their safe shelter. On the bridge, Martinez watched in horror as his tactical display showed Vorthak boarding parties throughout the ship. The enemy had planned this attack carefully, targeting the Defiant specifically to capture the children. "Sir, we have boarding parties on 7 decks, Foster reported. "Our security teams are fighting them, but they're everywhere." "The children," Martinez said, his voice tight with fear. "Are they safe?" Dr. Ross's voice came over the communication system, filled with panic. "Jake, the emergency shelter has been breached. The children are gone." Martinez felt his heart stop. For a moment, he couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Then rage filled him, a burning anger unlike anything he had ever felt. "All ships, this is Martinez," he broadcast on the fleet channel. "The Vorthak have taken our children. I don't care what it costs, we get them back." But even as he spoke, Martinez knew it was too late. The Vorthak boarding parties were already retreating to their ships, taking their prisoners with them. The human fleet was too damaged to pursue effectively. From the command ship of the Vorthak fleet, General Zarthok watched the human ships limp away from the battle. The raid had been a complete success. Not only had they damaged the human fleet, but they had captured the famous children of the Defiant. Zarthok had studied the human ship for months, learning about the unusual passengers it carried. The idea of taking enemy children as prisoners was not new to the Vorthak, but these particular children had become symbols of human resistance. Capturing them would be a major victory for the Empire. "General," one of his officers reported, "the human children are secured in detention cell 7. They have been separated and restrained as ordered." "Good," Zarthok replied. "Have you identified the leaders among them?" "The older male, Marcus Wright, appears to be their spokesman. The female, Lisa Brooks, seems to have significant influence over the younger ones." "And the young male, Danny Brooks, is her brother?" Zarthok nodded. He had plans for these children, plans that would break the spirit of the human fleet. But first he would contact the Defiant with his demands. An hour later, Martinez stood on the damaged bridge of his ship, staring at the communication screen. The alien face that looked back at him was unlike anything he had seen before. General Zarthok had the typical Vorthak features, but his eyes held an intelligence that was both ancient and cruel. "Commander Martinez," the general said, his voice carrying through the translation system, "I believe you are missing something important." The screen changed to show the children, all 10 of them, who had been captured. They were in a detention cell, sitting close together but clearly frightened. Marcus had his arm around Emma, trying to comfort her. Lisa was holding Danny's hand. They all looked small and vulnerable in the harsh alien environment. "You have something that belongs to me," Martinez said, his voice deadly calm. "On the contrary, Commander. These children now belong to the Vorthak Empire. They will make excellent slaves once they are properly trained." Martinez felt his hands clench into fists. "What do you want?" "Simple," Zarthok replied. "Surrender. Your ship and your crew. Come aboard my vessel as prisoners, and I will consider allowing the children to live as slaves instead of being executed. And if I refuse, The general's expression didn't change. Then you will watch your precious children die one by one until you change your mind. I will start with the smallest one. The screen switched back to the children. Little Emma was crying softly, and Marcus was trying to comfort her. They all looked so young, so helpless. Martinez felt something break inside his chest. I need time to consider, he said finally. You have 1 hour, Zarthok replied. After that, the first child dies. The screen went dark, leaving Martinez alone with the most impossible choice of his life. Around him, his crew waited in silence. They all knew what he was thinking. General Zarthok stood in the command center of his flagship, watching the human fleet retreat from the battle zone. The victory had been complete. 27 human ships destroyed or disabled, and the famous children of the Defiant now sat in his detention cells. It should have been the greatest triumph of his military career. So why did he feel uneasy? General, his aide, Captain Mordick, approached with a report. The human prisoners have been secured in maximum security detention. They are being held in separate cells as you ordered. Good, Zarthok replied, but his mind was elsewhere. Something about this victory felt wrong, though he couldn't identify what. Sir, should we begin interrogation procedures? Zarthok considered this. Normally he would have started breaking prisoners immediately, extracting information about human fleet movements and defensive positions. But these weren't normal prisoners. They were children, the youngest barely old enough to walk. Not yet, he decided. Let them settle in first. Fear works better when it has time to grow. What the general didn't know was that fear wasn't growing in detention cell 7. Instead, something much more dangerous was taking root. Marcus Wright, now 15 and the oldest of the captured children, sat in the corner of the cell studying everything around him. The walls were smooth metal, probably reinforced steel alloy. The door was electronic, controlled from outside. There were 2 security cameras, 1 in each upper corner. The air recycling system made a soft humming sound every 37 seconds. Marcus, what are you doing? Asked Lisa Brooks, who was sitting with her arm around little Emma. Learning, Marcus replied quietly. Count the guards. How many times do they patrol past our cell? Lisa began paying attention to the sounds outside their cell. Every 12 minutes, I think. 2 guards each time. Good. Danny, can you see anything interesting about the door controls? 9-year-old Danny Brooks crawled closer to the door, pretending to play with his shoelaces while studying the electronic lock. It's got 12 buttons and a scanner. The scanner glows blue when someone puts their hand on it. Voice control too, added Lisa. I heard one of the guards say something before the door opened, Marcus nodded, filing away each piece of information. We need to know more about this ship. The layout, the security systems, how many crew members there are. Why? Asked Emma. Her small voice barely above a whisper. Marcus knelt down beside the 4-year-old. Because Dad Jake is coming for us. And when he does, we need to be ready to help. Meanwhile, 3 levels above the detention area, General Zarthok was reviewing intelligence reports about his prisoners. What he read made him pause. These children have been living aboard a warship for 8 months? He asked his intelligence officer. Yes, sir. They were rescued from Colony 7 after our raid there. The humans have been keeping them aboard the Defiant ever since, and they participate in ship operations? According to our sources, yes. The older ones have been learning military procedures, engineering, and tactical analysis. The younger ones are being trained in basic ship operations. Zarthok frowned. In Vorthic society, children were kept separate from military affairs until they reached adult age. The idea of involving younglings in warfare was both strange and disturbing. Sir, another officer approached. We have a security concern in the detention area. What kind of concern? The prisoners have been observing our guards report. But they watch everything, ask questions about the ship, and seem to be taking notes. Taking notes? With what? They're not writing anything down, sir. But they appear to be memorizing details about our security procedures, guard rotations, and facility layout. Zarthok felt his unease growing. Show me. The general made his way to the detention level, where he could observe the prisoners through a one-way viewing panel. What he saw surprised him. The children were not cowering in fear as he had expected. Instead, they were sitting in a circle, whispering to each other in low voices. The oldest boy, Marcus, was drawing patterns on the floor with his finger while the others watched intently. "What is he doing?" Zarthok asked the guard. "We think he's making a map, sir. Every time the guards patrol, he adds more details." The general watched as Marcus pointed to different areas of his invisible map. While the other children nodded and asked questions, it looked exactly like a military briefing. "How long have they been doing this?" "Since they arrived, sir." The older ones organize the younger ones, assign them tasks, and share information. They're working together like a trained unit. Zarthok studied the children more carefully. They weren't acting like frightened prisoners. They were acting like soldiers preparing for a mission. "General," the guard continued, "there's something else. The girl with dark hair has been listening to our communications." "That's impossible. She doesn't speak Vorthek." "She didn't yesterday, sir. But today she's been responding to commands before we translate them. And she's teaching the others." Zarthok watched Lisa Brooks as she helped the younger children understand what the guards were saying. The 11-year-old was picking up the Vorthek language with frightening speed. "Sir, should we separate them?" The general considered this. Separating the children would make them easier to control, but it would also make them more frightened and less useful as bargaining tools. And something told him that these particular children might be more dangerous apart than together. Not yet, he decided, but increase security and monitor everything they do. Back in the cell, the children had finished their daily intelligence gathering session. They now knew the ship had at least 4 levels, with the detention area in the lower section. There were approximately 200 crew members on board, based on the meal times and shift changes they could observe. The guards carried energy weapons but also had mechanical backup weapons. "The air recycling system connects all the rooms," Danny observed. "I can hear sounds from other parts of the ship through the vents." "Good," Marcus replied. "That means we might be able to move through them if we can get the covers off." "The guards are getting nervous," Lisa added. "I heard them talking about us. They think we're planning something." "We are," Marcus said simply. "We're planning to go home." "Little." Emma looked up at him with wide eyes. "How?" "I don't know yet," Marcus admitted. "But Dad Jake taught us that there's always a way. We just have to find it." 2 days later, General Zarthok received a report that made his blood run cold. "Sir, we have a problem in detention level 3. What now?" "One of the security cameras in the children's cell has been disabled." Zarthok felt his stomach drop. "How?" "We're not sure, sir. The camera was working during the morning inspection, but when the guards checked again this afternoon, it was dead. No external damage, no obvious tampering." "What about the other camera?" "Still functioning, but it only covers half the cell now. There are blind spots." The general hurried to the detention level to see for himself. The broken camera hung uselessly. From the ceiling, its lens dark and dead. The remaining camera showed the children sitting peacefully in their circle, apparently unaware that anything had happened. How could they reach it? Zarthok demanded. "That camera is 3 meters off?" "The ground." The guard looked uncomfortable. "We think they might have worked together, sir. The older boy could have stood on the shoulders of the others. But how did they disable it without tools?" "That's what we can't figure out, sir." Zarthok studied the broken camera carefully. There were no marks, no signs of violence. It simply looked like the device had stopped working. "Sir," another guard approached. "The children are requesting to speak with you." "With me? Why?" "They say they have important information about the human fleet, information that might help us win the war." The general was suspicious but also curious. "Bring the oldest one, too." "The interrogation room. Search him thoroughly first." 20 minutes later, Marcus Wright sat across from General Zarthok in a sterile white room. The boy looked small in the adult-sized chair, but his eyes held a steady intelligence that made the general uncomfortable. You wanted to speak with me, Zarthok said. Yes, sir, Marcus replied politely. I want to make a deal. Children do not make deals with generals. I'm not just a child, sir. I'm crew of the Defiant. And I know things that might be valuable. To you, Zarthok leaned forward, intrigued despite himself. What kind of things? Fleet positions, defensive strategies, weaknesses in human ship designs. I'd been studying these things for 8 months. And what do you want in return? Marcus looked directly into the general's eyes. Better conditions for the younger children. They're scared and hungry. Emma is only 4 years old. The request surprised Zarthok. He had expected the boy to ask for his own freedom or for weapons or for some kind of escape plan. Instead, he was bargaining for the welfare of the others. You would betray your own species for the comfort of your companions? I would do anything to protect my family, Marcus replied without hesitation. There was something in the boy's voice, a certainty and determination that reminded Zarthok of his most experienced officers. This wasn't a child begging for mercy. This was a soldier negotiating terms. I will consider your offer, the general said finally. Return him to the cell. As the guards escorted Marcus away, Zarthok found himself more troubled than before. The boy had shown no fear, no signs of deception. He had negotiated. The USS Defiant moved through space like a ghost, its engines running silent and its lights dimmed. Commander Jake Martinez had spent 3 days planning the most dangerous mission of his career. The Vorthak Fortress ship was heavily defended, carrying enough firepower to destroy a small fleet. But Martinez didn't care about the odds. His children were inside that ship, and he was going to bring them home. Approaching the target, whispered Lieutenant Amy Foster from her position at the tactical station. Enemy sensors haven't detected us yet. Martinez nodded, studying the massive Vorthak vessel on his screen. The ship was twice the size of the Defiant, bristling with weapons and protected by powerful shields. Getting inside would be nearly impossible. Getting out alive would be even harder. Chief Collins, are the boarding pods ready? Aye, sir, came the gruff reply from engineering. 12 pods, each carrying 2 crew members. We'll punch through their hull and fight our way to the detention. Level, Dr. Ross, medical team standing by. Ready, Jake. Whatever condition we find the children in, we'll take care of them. Martinez took a deep breath. In a few minutes, he would either be reunited with his family or they would all be dead. There was no middle ground. All teams launch. Boarding pods on my mark. 3, 2, 1, mark. The Defiant's hull opened like a flower, releasing 12 small pods that streaked toward the Vorthak fortress. The enemy's defenses immediately came alive, filling space with deadly energy beams. 3 pods were destroyed before they reached their target, but 9 made it through. The pods struck the Vorthak hull with tremendous force, their cutting tools boring through the thick armor. Martinez was in the lead pod with Chief Collins, and they were the first to break through into the enemy ship. Move, move, move! Martinez shouted as his team poured through the breach. Vorthak soldiers were already rushing toward them, their weapons blazing. The battle inside the fortress was fierce and bloody. The human boarding teams fought corridor by corridor, deck by deck, pushing deeper into the ship. Martinez had studied the ship's layout for hours, memorizing every passage that led to the detention level, but as they fought their way through the ship, Martinez began to notice something strange. The resistance was lighter than expected. The Vorthak were fighting hard, but they seemed confused, disorganized. Alarms were blaring throughout the ship, but not just battle alarms. There were also security alerts coming from the detention level. Sir, Foster's voice crackled through his communicator. Something's wrong with the enemy ship. Their communications are chaotic. They're reporting security breaches all over the detention section. Security breaches? From what? Unknown, sir. But whatever it is, it's helping us. Their defensive positions keep getting disrupted. Meanwhile, deep in the detention level of the Vorthak fortress, the children of the Defiant were putting their own plan into action. For 3 days, they had been studying every detail of their prison. Now, with the battle raging above them, it was time to escape. Danny, is the vent cover ready? Marcus Wright whispered to his 9-year-old friend. Almost. Danny replied, working carefully with a piece of metal he had broken off from the broken security camera. Lisa taught me how to pick locks by watching the guards. Just a few more seconds. Guards coming, Lisa Brooks warned from her position by the door. 2 minutes out. The vent cover finally came loose, revealing a dark passage that led deeper into the ship. Marcus helped the younger children climb up and into the ventilation system, starting with 4-year-old Emma. Remember the plan? Marcus whispered as each child disappeared into the darkness. We meet at the junction point, then head for the main computer room. By the time the guards reached their cell for the regular patrol, it was empty. The children had vanished without a trace. General Zarthok was in his command center when the reports started flooding in. First, the human boarding attack. Then, impossible news from the detention level. Sir, the prisoners have escaped, his security chief reported, his voice shaking with disbelief. How is that possible? The cell was secure. They somehow accessed the ventilation system. But, sir, that's not the worst part. They're not just running. They're attacking our systems. What do you mean? They've reached the secondary computer core. Somehow they're accessing our ship's systems. Internal security is going down section by section. Zarthok felt ice forming in his stomach. Children cannot access Vorthik military computers. Sir, you need to see this. The main screen changed to show the secondary computer room. There, surrounded by complex alien technology, 9-year-old Danny Brooks was working at a computer terminal with the focused concentration of a trained technician. His small fingers moved across the alien controls with surprising confidence. How does he know our systems? Zarthok whispered, "Sir, we're getting reports from all over the ship. The girl, Lisa Brooks, is using our own communication system too. Coordinate with the human boarding teams. She's telling them exactly where to go, which passages to avoid, where our defense teams are positioned." On another screen, Lisa appeared, speaking rapidly into a Vorthak communication device. She was speaking perfect Vorthok, giving detailed instructions about ship layout and defensive positions. And the older boy, Marcus Wright, the security chief continued, he's in the weapons control room. He's systematically shutting down our defensive systems. Zarthok watched in growing horror as 15-year-old. Marcus Wright moved through the weapons control center like he had been trained there his entire life. The boy was disabling gun batteries, disrupting shield harmonics, and opening passages for the human boarding teams. Sir, they're not just escaping, the security chief said, his voice barely above a whisper. They're taking control of our ship. The general stared at the screens showing 3 human children dismantling his fortress from the inside. Danny was redirecting power away from defensive systems. Lisa was broadcasting false orders to Vorthik security teams, sending them to the wrong locations. Marcus was opening blast doors and disabling security barriers. How? Zarthok demanded. How can children do this? Sir, I think I understand now, his aide said quietly. These children haven't just been living on a human warship. They've been learning from it. For 8 months, they've studied military tactics, ship operations, computer systems, and combat procedures. They're not just children anymore. They're soldiers, Zarthok finished, the terrible truth finally hitting him. At that moment, the command center doors burst open. Commander Martinez and his boarding team rushed in, their weapons ready. But what shocked the general wasn't the sight of human soldiers. It was what happened next. The children appeared from all directions. Danny climbed out of a maintenance hatch near the main computer. Lisa emerged from a communication station. Marcus dropped down from an overhead access panel. They moved with military precision, taking defensive positions around the human soldiers. Dad, Jake! Little Emma cried, running to Martinez and throwing her arms around him, but even as Martinez hugged the 4-year-old, his eyes never left the Vorthik general. Around the command center, the other children took positions like trained soldiers, watching for threats and covering the exits. You came for us, Lisa said, but there was no surprise in her voice. She had expected this. Always, Martinez replied. We never leave family behind. General Zarthok stared at the scene before him. The human commander was surrounded by children, but these weren't helpless victims. They were his crew, his soldiers, his family, and they had just captured his entire ship. You took their children. Zarthok whispered, his voice trembling with a fear he had never felt before. You've doomed us all. Martinez looked confused. What do you mean? The general's multiple eyes were wide with terror as understanding finally came to him. In all our wars across the galaxy, we've learned that a species' children show their true nature. These young ones, they don't just fight. They adapt, they learn, they become deadlier with each challenge. Zarthok continued, his voice growing stronger as the full implications hit him. If this is what human children can do after 8 months, on a warship, what will they become as adults? What will their children become? We've faced many species, the general said, but never children who could turn our own technology against us, who could outsmart our best tacticians, who could inspire such loyalty that warriors would die for them. You humans don't just fight for survival. You fight for family. And now we've given you a reason to teach your children that we are the enemy. Martinez looked around at the children who had helped capture an enemy fortress. Danny, who understood alien technology better than most adult engineers. Lisa, who could speak and think in multiple alien languages. Marcus, who could outthink experienced military officers. You don't understand, Martinez said quietly. We weren't training them to be soldiers. We were just trying to keep them safe, to give them a home. That's exactly what makes them so dangerous, Zarthok replied. You gave them love, purpose, and the skills to protect what they care about. You've created something the galaxy has never seen before. The general looked at each child in turn, seeing now what he had missed before. These weren't just human children. They were the first generation of a new kind of human, raised in space, trained by war, but motivated by love and family.